Hi everyone, welcome to another video on how to make Power BI dashboards for team sports. Today, we're going to be going through how to make a session report using Power BI of our GPS data from training sessions and match. This is going to allow you to view multiple training sessions and be able to create a visual report that you can share with your coach or your sports science team. And you can also be able to access all previous sessions and be able to export it directly from here. The first thing that you're going to need today is your GPS database. So this example that I have here is a master data dump from all of the GPS data that I have collected so far. So what I do is I export using my GPS provider, I export all of the metrics and all of the players of each session that I have. So you can see here on the first row that I have all the metrics that are able to be exported, and I have that for each player on each session on each date. So I really recommend that you export as many metrics as you can, just that you are able to go back, and if there was a metric that you weren't considering before and now you want to look at it, you're always going to have that in your database. So just make this as big as you want. What we're going to do today is make a visual report using Power BI so that you can have your session reports and see player by player how the performance went in a given training session or match. The first thing you need to do is open Power BI and get your data. So we're going to get our data using Excel. I'm going to select the data dump spreadsheet that I have created. So now that you have imported successfully your data into Power BI, you can see it on the right side on fields. You can see that data dump is the name of the Excel file that I've imported. And you can see that every one of these variables refers to each column that I have in my Excel database. So each one of these is a variable or a metric exported from your GPS. So the first thing that we want to do is just put a simple title box on the top left. So if you just select the text box, we're going to put the title of our report, just to make that clear. So session reports, and fix that to size. So the next thing that you want to do is to insert a slicer. So the slicer is going to allow us to select which session on which date we're looking at in the report. So like I said before, on my data dump I have all of the sessions. As you can see from the date, I have all of the sessions, probably worth almost about a season's worth of data in this data dump. So we want to make sure that we indicate to the Power BI report what session we want to see. So for that, we're just going to use the slicer visualization. So if you select the slicer, and as our main variable, we're going to select the session date. So yeah, session date, here we go. I'm going to select that. And then just to make that easier for us, we're going to make it go here on the top right of the box on the down arrow. And we're going to make that a drop down so that we can select exactly what date we're looking at. So as you can see, here's each one of the dates, each of them representing a separate training session. So that makes it easier for us to just scroll down using the slicer and select what session we want to look at. We're going to fix that just under the title. There you go. It allows you to just select whatever session that you want to look at. So the next thing we want to do is just to make our report more visual and easy to read. It's just to put some key indicators on top as a card. So that allows us to look at the report and get a brief or a summary of the most important metrics on top. For that, we're going to use the card visualization. So if you select card, and we're going to put this right on top of our report. And for these, you can select whatever metrics you and your team value the most. It's completely up to you. For this example, I'm just going to use a few that I think are very important and they look good to put them as a summary on the report. So the first one would be total time, which is just the duration of our session. So at the beginning, you might get a number that's not going to make much sense. And that is because by default, Power BI is always going to give you the sum of values. So right now you're seeing the sum of all of the duration in minutes of each player. So what we want to do is just change that to average. So now what we're looking at is the average of time of my reports. So this number is currently in minutes. So it's not hours, minutes, seconds. So it's actually just the total number of minutes that my session lasted. So for this case, 6th of September, it was just 66 minutes on average of all my players. So if you just want to make that look a little bit nicer, just go to Format. We're going to take the category off. I'm going to put a title on. It's completely up to you again, but for me, I prefer to take the category off and just put my own title. So I'm going to call that duration in minutes. So this definitely looks a lot better for me, just to make sure that it's nice and clear and that the coach knows what variable he's looking at. So this one will be duration in minutes. And we can do a few more just to make that, again, just to make it look nice and give a brief of the reports. And also I'm going to take the decimal values out of that variable, just because we don't really need decimal values when it comes to minute duration of our session. So if you just come here and set the display units as none, and in value decimal places, we're going to put 0. So we're going to go ahead and put a few more cards to give us some key indicators of a summary of our session. So I'm going to select another card, put it here on top. And I'm just going to go for total distance. And the same thing as before, by default it's going to give you the sum of values, so make sure you set that as average. That's going to give you the average of the player's total distance of the session. Same again, we're going to make that look the same as before. So take away the decimal values. Take away the category and put our own title on. I'm going to call that distance. Now I'm going to put a couple more indicators on top, just to make it easier for everyone. You can just select the previous box and just copy and paste that, just so that it keeps the same format and size as the other boxes. And all you have to do is just change the variable inside. I'm going to go for explosive distance in this case. Again, it's completely up to you what variables you want to choose. And we're going to drag that and just replace the other variable. And make sure you make it as average. Now we just have to change the title to explosive distance. I'm going to choose just one more variable to put our summary on top of the report. Just copy and paste it again. And for this one, I'm going to select high speed running. Great. And finally, one more thing I'll do is I'm going to put a logo on the top right, which in your case would be just your team crest or your organization logo. So I'm going to insert that as an image. So if you come to insert image, just going to put the soccer ball and pretend that's my team logo. I'm just going to try and fit that on top. feel free to play around with it and just make sure that you're happy with how it looks, just that everything fits nice and it looks okay. Perfect, so that's the first part of our session report done. We got our slicer, which gives us, allows us to select what session we want to look at. So even now I can just go and select a different session. You can see how the values are already updating according to what I select. So now we can move on to selecting our main visualizations of our reports. I always recommend that you select as few as possible and just select the most important information that you want to express in your report. If you select too many variables and you put too much information in your report, that's just going to end up in you missing key information, and the coach is just going to overlook some key pieces of information that you want to feed him, and in general it's just going to look bad. So make sure you keep it as short and simple as possible. For me, I'm just going to select 4 of the most important metrics into my report. So first, I'm going to select a stack column chart, and in here, I'm going to put all my different distances. So we're going to put here our total distance, but we're not just going to put our total distance, but we're going to actually divide that and stack all the different distance in zones so that it adds up to the total distance value. So the first thing is we're going to look for distance in zone 1. So this is my distance in zone 1, I'm going to select that one. And I'm going to also select all of my distance in zone 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or depending on how many distance zones you have on your export. So on my y-axis, I already have all my distance in zones selected. So now we have to make our x-axis display our player name. So if you come to search your player last name or your player name variable from your database, we're going to drag this and we're going to put this in the axis box. So now you can see that that is showing me the player name on the x-axis. We're going to make this look good now. We got all the key information inside, but now we're going to make it look good. So there's a lot of things in this graph that are taking up some unnecessary space. So the first thing will be the title. We're going to change that very large title that it has. So I'm just going to put total distance. We also want to take away some of these legends and some of the axis titles that we have, so it gives us more space for data and less space for titles. So we're going to take off the legend. And for this graph, you can actually make it sort the order in different ways. So if you come to the options, you can actually select how you want to sort your graph. So if you want to do it by alphabetical order, you can select sort by player last name and sort ascending or descending. And that's going to just arrange your x-axis according to the player last name. And the other options that you have is to sort it by the value. So if you want to sort it by, okay, I want to see who did, first I want to see who did my my highest distance in zone 6. And you select that and it's going to arrange from lowest to highest or highest to lowest. And you can see the players who did the most high speed distance or whatever specific distance that you want to choose. So now we're going to go and move on to our next visualization. The next one we're going to choose is going to be high-speed running. So this is going to be a much simpler visualization where we're just going to have our high-speed running on our y-axis and player names on our x-axis. So the same thing again, just select the visualization of stack column chart and look for the variable that you want to put into it. And for the y-axis, we're going to put that as a value. And for my x-axis, you're going to put the player names right on the axis box. So same as last time, we want to clean up our visualization box and take away any unnecessary information here. And change the title to high speed running. And we're going to take off the axis titles. Off from my x-axis, now to my y-axis. Scroll down to title and turn off. Okay, great. So this looks very simple. Again, you got only one variable. It's not like the previous graph. This is a much simpler graph with just displaying each player's high speed running for that session. And you might want to put the same order for each graph so that when you want to look at a player, you always know that he's going to be in the same position in his graph. So I'm going to sort it by player last name, ascending. So now that's our first two graphs. You can see how easy it is to just make a simple graph for any metric. So we got total distance and high speed running. The next metric I'm going to select is going to be accelerations and decelerations. And I'm going to put them both on the same graph. So I'm going to select again my stack column chart. And I'm going to stack my accels and decels on each bar of this graph. So select your chart. And I'm going to select my accelerations and decelerations. I'm actually going to go specifically for a specific zone range because I'm not really interested in seeing all of my accelerations. I'm actually just looking for from zone 3 to zone 6, and the same with deceleration. So just select accelerations above zone 3. I'm going to do the same for my decelerations. So now you can see that I have them both selected in my value box. And finally, again, just select your players' names for the axis on the x-axis. So I'm going to do the same as before one more time and clean up the graph. Make sure it doesn't have any excessive information. I'm going to name the title as accelerations and decelerations. So this is the total number of accelerations and decelerations that each one of my players has. I'm also going to take down the legend. Perfect. So you see that it's nice and clear. The graph is clearly displaying each player, and you can clearly see how many accels and decels. If you just put the mouse on top, you can see the specific number of how much each one of those are. So I'm going to also sort the graph in the same order as my other graph, so that I'm keeping the same order and everything of player name ascending. Okay. So finally, for my last visualization of my report, I'm going to integrate two variables in one visualization. So these two variables I'm going to choose is going to be sprints and max speed. So for this, I'm actually going to use the line and stack column chart visualization. So I'm going to select this visualization, and I'm going to put obviously my player name on the shared axis. I'm going to select my sprints, my column values, and for my second variable, which is max speed, I'm going to put those as a line value. So this is going to allow me to look at both my sprints as a bar and to look at the max speed achieved by the player during the whole session. So this is a good way to integrate two variables that are somehow related to each other and make them both in the same graph. That's going to save you space, and it's going to allow you to provide more information. So if I just first clean up this visualization a bit by toggling off the axis titles. I'm going to take the legend off as well. And I'm going to change that title as well, just to sprints and max speed. So one thing I want to do is I want to change this graph a little bit more so that it indicates me in a better way the information I wanted to display. So as you can see right now, by not allowing the line graph to start at 0, it actually looks like some of these players didn't achieve a high speed at all. Whereas some of these players, the lowest player actually achieved 25.3 kilometers per hour as max speed, which is fair enough. So I want to change the way that looks so it actually better represents the information I'm giving to the coach. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to change where the y-axis starts. So if you go to y-axis, the first thing you're going to see is the column chart. So you have to scroll a bit down until we find the line chart. So it's going to say y-axis line. And here I'm going to go down to the start and end variables, and I'm going to select that it's going to start at 0. So that allows the line graph to start at 0, and it's going to better represent the values that I'm trying to give. And finally, I'm going to also change the type of line that I'm going to use. I'm going to go down to shapes, and we're going to go down to where it says stepped, and I'm going to turn on the stepped function. And I'm also going to change the line style to dashed. So this is going to better give you an idea of which players achieved what max speed and the order of it. So if I'm going to change that again to sorted by player last name, ascending, so that it keeps the same order as everything else. And you can see by the looks of it that you can see which players achieved the highest speed and the lower speeds, and which players achieved the highest amounts of sprints. So now you can see that we have all of our visualizations in order and displaying all the information that we wanted to show to our coach. So now finally we're just going to give some final touches to make it look a bit better. So one thing can be choosing a different color for each graph, so that each color, by just looking at it, you know it's going to represent a specific metric. So I'm going to choose a different color for each metric. Great. So this just allows me to make it look better and be a bit more visual, so that we know that in our report each color we're going to associate it with a metric, and we know that each color is always going to represent a given metric. Finally, I know of a lot of clients I've worked before that they like to have the data label on each of the graph, so that's something that you can also do. So say for example, for your high speed running, if you want to show each bar to show the data label on top, you can just come to Format and toggle on the data label. And you can do the same thing with all of the different graphs. So one situation you might have is, say in a stock chart, just like the total distance, you might say, okay, if I toggle on the data label, that's just going to overflow my chart with information that I cannot understand. But there is a potential solution to this, where you can actually display the total on top of the chart. So originally, you can see that when you come to data labels, there's actually no option from Power BI to give the total of all the values in the stack chart. It only gives you, it only allows you to give the information for each variable that you have in the chart. So what we're going to do to give this a workaround is we're going to change this graph. We're going to change it to line and stack column chart. Originally, you're not going to see any difference when you're selected, but what we're going to do is we're going to import our total distance, and we're going to move total distance to our line value. And that's going to add a line value with the total distance, which is going to be equal to the sum of all the distance in zone 1 to 6. So we're going to come to our format, go to data labels. I'm going to turn these on. Again, it's going to show you too much information in the graph, but we'll just take care of that in a sec. If you scroll down and find customize series and toggle that on, we're going to turn off the data labels for each one of the variables, except for total distance. So if you come one by one and toggle those off, that's going to leave you with only the values for total distance. So what you can do is you can actually make that, just going to show it above the line. And there you go. That's going to give you the number, the data label of the total distance just on top of the chart. Other things you can do, if you don't like the way it's displaying the units, you can just show 0 decimal values and just show none. So that gives you the actual full value of the total distance. If you like the line in the chart, you can just keep the line. But for me, I'm just going to take it off. And if you want to take it off, you just have to come down to shapes. And you can see it's going to give you the stroke width option. I'm just going to reduce it until it just shows 0. So now what you have is the data label of the total distance instead of the distance by each zone. In another situation, say axles and decels, maybe you actually do want to see the number of axles and decels separately. In that case, you don't need to go and do everything that we've just done. You actually just have to come down here and turn on the data labels. You can see that you even have the option of displaying the color of the background. If you want a background or not, you can just go on and off. And you can customize everything from the font size, text size, and etc. Now we're going to do the same thing for our sprints and max speed. Okay, if that doesn't make sense to you and you don't think it looks good, just take it off. But I know a lot of people that like to just have the data labeled directly so you can quickly visualize and see the exact number of each value. Furthermore, if you just select a given player, Power BI actually highlights to you how his player is doing, and it's going to even give you the average of each one of those values. So you don't actually, if you don't want the labels, you don't have to do it. You can always just click on a player and you can always see the exact value of what he's showing. And finally, it's important to note that some of you might have different drills in your database. So in the drill title column, some of you might not just have full session, but you might have every drill for every training session and matches displayed in the database. So it's important that you tell your Power BI database to not take each drill individually, but just to take the whole session in order to make a full session report. So for that, we're going to use the filtering tool of Power BI. All we need to do is to find the drill title column on our fields and drag that on a filter of the page. What we want to make sure is that the drill title is set as full session in every occasion. This way, you avoid combining different drills together, and you can make sure that your session report reflects only the full session as an entire report. So there we go. That's the final step into making our Power BI dashboard of a session report. You can see that you have your slicer, which allows you to select each different session, and the dashboard is always going to automatically update according to which session you are selecting. When you want to import a new training session from the session you did most recently, all you have to do is find the report of that given session. So in this case, this is a session we would have done yesterday. I want to import that into my master database sheet. So if I just scroll down to the bottom of my master data dump and copy and paste that last session in here, all I have to do is now save my Excel sheet, come back to Power BI and go click on refresh. This is gonna refresh and synchronize my Power BI dashboard with my updated Excel sheet so that it includes the latest data I've just imported into the sheet. Once that finished loading, you can see that if you go down in your slicer and go down to the last session, it's going to include that 23rd of April session I've just recently imported. So you can see how easy it is, and it's going to save you tons of time. Once you already have your database set up, all you need to do is copy and paste the last session on your master database, and you can have all of your data stored in a single and nice looking Power BI dashboard. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video. If you have any suggestions or any ideas, please comment below. And thank you for watching again. Take care.